Hi everyone, how you going? It's Sean again. I want to share with you 5 tips for my daily driven track mini project. This time around I'm planning. This time around I'm not making the same mistake I've made before with all my other modded cars. I'm planning and I'm going to share it with you. So grab a cuppa and let's have a chat. So let's get straight into it. Step 1. You got to start with the end in mind. Know what you want to achieve and have that front of mind when you're planning all the mods that you're going to do and all the stuff that you're planning to modify to your car. If I was having a fully decked track rat of a car that's going to be out every weekend, it's fully track focused, not daily driven, I'd probably trailer it to the track, that sort of thing. How I modify this is going to be completely different to how I modify my project car, because it has to be a daily driver. So what I do is going to be completely different, because if you keep the end goal in mind, so for me, daily driver, occasional track car, so it's got to be able to get to the track, be competent on the track, but I've got to be able to drive it there and back. So for me, I'm going to make decisions with the parts that I put in. Whenever you modify a car, you're always compromising. You're either compromising on NVH, noise, vibration, harshness. You're going to compromise on that if you're going to get something that's fully race bred. So you're going to get something that's more than likely going to be harder, more vibrations, louder. Goes without saying. And the other end of the spectrum, if you want to go something that's fully daily driven, then that's going to be soft, it's going to be comfortable, and on the track it's going to wallow around. So you've got to keep that in mind. So there's always compromise. There's always, you're sacrificing something whenever you make a decision. So that's planning idea 1. Now, planning idea 2 is be realistic. You have to be realistic about what you want to achieve. A great example for me is when I had to put a new clutch in the last car I had, the Subaru STI. I wasn't realistic. In the back in my mind I was thinking, well, I need something that'll carry, 1,000 newton meters of torque or something. Like I ended up buying a clutch that could take 850 newton meters of tractive force. Like my car, even as modified as it was back then, it was probably around the 500 to 600 newton meters. Like it was maxed out at that stage. And I went and bought a clutch that could go to 850. That was ridiculous. And you know what? I paid for it. Because as a daily driver, when I had that clutch, oh my goodness, that thing was so hard to put in. As in, that thing was so hard to daily drive. Like you'd be in the lights and you'd be putting your foot on the clutch and, oh mate, it wasn't a great daily driver. It was a stupid decision. It was unrealistic. So a good example. Instead, I should have bought something that had some more of a compromise. Realistically, do you need that titanium drive shaft? Do you need that carbon fiber doors and panels and bonnet? For the track mini, I'm not going to deck this thing out in full carbon fiber. Be realistic. Seems a basic consideration, but a lot of the times with the STI, I was not realistic. I was thinking about the titanium. No, it wasn't titanium. It was carbon fiber drive shaft. I was going to buy one of those. Thank goodness I didn't. Anyway, that was probably one of the few things I hadn't bought for that. I did think about it though. So be realistic. That's the next one. Okay, planning idea 3. For me, remember it's a daily driver, right? So planning tip for me is this one. Relates to step 1, but I kind of want to go into a little bit more detail around this one. So you can actually buy a cheap, relatively high performing coilover, but it's going to be hard. It's not going to have the technology built into it and the investment built into it to give you some comfort as a daily driver. Using a coilover is a great example, because a lot of the times if you want something as a high performing coilover that has some daily driven comfort to it, you're going to pay for it. It's not going to be cheap. Good quality coilovers they have the technology built into them. the way they're designed, the way the tubing's designed, the way the spring rates are progressive, etc., they can be comfortable for as a daily and be an awesome coilover for the track. A great example of, remember it's a daily drive, is like the one I said before, the clutch. That's a good example of where you need to make decisions around compromise to get something that's going to work on the track somewhat and then also be somewhat drivable. So that's planning idea 3. Let's go on to 4. So planning idea 4 is, what's your exit strategy? You also need to make a decision relatively early around whether you plan to keep the car for a year, 2 years, 5 years, or ongoing. Potentially you want to keep this car for a long time, more, 10 years or more. You need to have that decision made at the start as well, because it may also drive your decision about how much you invest into the car. So for me, my exit strategy is not to spend too much over the value of the car, and I'll explain that with how I go through my budget. So for me, I'll explain in a minute, my budget drives my exit strategy. Potentially I will keep this car for a long time. Again, I'm making it a decision at the beginning to only spend a certain amount over the value of the car if I was to sell it. Simple as that. And I'll go into more detail around how that looks next. So planning idea 5, the last one, is have a budget in mind and work to a budget. I'll actually show you my budget, and so you can get an idea of how I've gone about it and how I'm thinking around over value spend. Let me show you my budget. See what you think. So this is how I've done it. I don't pretend it's the best way to do it. Probably isn't. It's how I've done it. So let me show you. Come on, have a look. So first thing I started with was mod categories. So I started by looking at any of the mods I wanted to do for the engine, the driveline and suspension, interior and exterior. So some of the things you see here doesn't necessarily mean they're included in my plan, but you'll see most of them are either in the different stages of my planning. So for engine, I've got the usual intake piping, intake filter, cold plugs, intercooler upgrade, upgraded ignition pack, leads, chip or tune, camshaft, larger injectors, smaller pulley upgrade, crankshaft pulley upgrade, and potentially E85 tune. And moving on to driveline suspension, looking at either lowering springs or coilovers, sway bars, adjustable control arms, and an LSD. This car that I've bought does not have an LSD, limited slip diff. Interior, looking at a 4-point roll cage, harness, racing seats, and a CAI shifter or similar. Now again, doesn't mean that I am intending to do all of these things. This is just brainstorming everything that I'd like to do, and then I work out the budget side of things, and I'll show you that shortly. So exterior, some dechroming and some other things you see there. Maintenance items I've also put down, potentially tyres, pads, fluids, clutch. So if my clutch needs to be replaced, I won't just replace with a standard one. I'll more than likely go with a single mass clutch and a lightened flywheel. That's a good option, and in some cases it's actually cheaper than going with the dual mass flywheel, which is what the R53 Mini comes with. And obviously at the same time heavy duty clutch. And then through this car, like many others that I've owned, I look at doing any of the polyurethane or nolethane, I think you call it, bushing throughout the car, throughout the suspension. That hardens up all the geometry of the suspension. It's really good. So that's what I start with, the mod items. So let's go to the budget. So this is what I do, and this is what I've done. So essentially I look at, so I got the car that I bought, this 2004 R53 Mini Cooper S, I bought for 7,500, that's Australian dollars, AUD. And that's it was quite underpriced for what I bought. That's really low Ks, had only done just over 100,000 kilometres, which is very low for that year mileage. For that year car, that mileage, very low. The car right off the bat I could have resold for 9,500. So very good value. I got it under price, so that's great. It was so it was, good buy. The way I've done it in several stages. Stage one, I'm looking at these mods, and these are the prices essentially that I'm looking at paying for each of these parts. And this is from all sorts of areas where I'm buying things from. For example, the 9379 for the intake airbox and filter, that's from a store online here in Australia. There's not many places to buy mini parts in Australia. Some of what I've bought has come from overseas, from the US and the UK. And in some cases I can buy something from the US or the UK and get it over here in Australia, and it's still cheaper. The MSD ignition you see here, I actually got that off a trading site here in Australia called Gumtree, and that only cost me 55. And I think normally that should have cost me nearly 170 Australian, so quite a saving there. Intercooler, NVIDIA, catback exhaust, front strut bars. And then second part of stage one, some of these are bought, some are not yet bought. So there's a manifold, Jones Speed manifold, titanium wrap that will go onto the manifold, Craven Speed, reduced pulley, 15%, the belt, the plugs, cooler plugs, power chip, etc. So you see that. So essentially you see stage one. I was looking at all of the mods and I thought, well, okay, what are the mods that I'd like to ensure that I do get straight away onto the car? And that's what made it into stage one. Stage two, if you have a look at this, so stage two I have lowering springs, Magna Core ignition leads, slotted rotors, brake lines, performance pads, light wheels, R56 calipers. I actually bought R53 calipers off Cooper S R56, and you convert them to a JCW caliper. So I actually restored these calipers, but that's sneak peek, that's coming. Stage three, I've got adjustable coilovers, so I would sell the springs if I was to go and get coilovers, so that would reduce the cost of those. Incidentally, this is sort of a mid-range coilover price that I'm looking at, around the 1,600 mark, is a great coilover for the road and for the track. Adjustable control arms, aluminum slip diff, light and crank pulley, and keep going down. Stage 4 mods, larger injectors, cam upgrade, racing seat, roll cage, tune. So I don't actually plan to do stage 4 mods at this stage, and I would look at doing some mods in stage 3 potentially. But again, what I've done is I've started to say, okay, hypothetically, if I was to go to a car and spend all this on it, how much would it cost me? And this takes me to the next stage. So let me scroll over here for a second. So this is what I've done this time around to make sure I don't overspend. So I look at the value, estimated car value, and I look at how much I'm spending with each stage. So with stage 1 mods, how much I've spent over the value of the car is $714. So 7.5% over the value if I was to go and sell the car. Stage 2 increases, so that then goes up to 2,700 over value, so it'll be 28% roughly. Stage 3, as you see, 4,800 over, so 50% over the value over value spend of the car. And if I was to go through and do all of the mods, including stage 4 track, it's 7,800, which is 82% over the value of the car. Now, it's important thing to note too that as you've done all this investment into the car, the value of the car does increase slightly. It doesn't increase comparable to the money you've spent, but it does increase. So I have seen other cars that have comparable mods to the final track stage 4 that were going for sort of mid-teens, so 13,500 is a conservative potential value that I can sell the car for, which means the car would be $3,800 over the value spend. It's just one way of looking at it, because as you spend and invest into it, it does increase slightly, but you don't get all your money back, that's for sure. This is my plan. Gives you a bit of an insight. Now, the other thing I might touch on here is that one of the things I'm doing as well is in doing this car up this time, is to look at ways to raise the money by selling things to actually get the money to mod the car. So part of it is also looking at creative ways of raising funds. So right now I've raised nearly 1,800 towards the mods of the car already. I'm planning to raise 3,582. When you look at that and you go back to the budget, you can tell that if I can do that, I'm actually covering a huge amount of the mod costs of the car, even up to stage 3, which means I'm probably, if I can raise that amount of money, then the amount of overvalue spend or dollars that I've sunk in starts to diminish, essentially, if you look at it that way. So there's several things that I've collected here along the way, selling old car parts. Actually, you'll notice that there, Pokemon cards. So I actually play Pokemon with my daughter, and we collect the Pokemon cards. It's actually quite fun. And I've got $1,500 worth of Pokemon cards I'm actually selling. So I've put in the conservative value there because I do go down in value to sell each card. And I've got about 20 odd cards, 25 cards I'm selling. Okay, before you have a go at me, let me show you this. I know you're thinking, what? Pokemon cards? What the heck is this guy doing? So, Pokemon cards, check this out. I'm telling you, you'd be surprised what you might have that's worth money. It's, so let me show you. Check this out, just wait. Just wait. Let's see if I've got one of the good ones still here that I haven't sold. Hang on. Where the heck is... No, not that one. So all of these are worth money, but here's one. These sort of cards... This isn't, this one's probably only worth about 30 bucks. But these sort of shiny cards, so that one, see if it focuses. Yeah, not really. You gonna focus? Yep, those sort of cards, shiny cards like that, they can be worth like 100 bucks. I just sold one for $200. So, they can be worth a lot of money. Don't underestimate what someone's willing to pay for a nice shiny card. People will pay some insane money, and I'm happy for them to give it to me. Got to fund this car somehow. I just started doing this and I was quite surprised. It's amazing what you look at. So it's amazing what people are willing to pay for things, what value some people put on things. So if there's a rarity to something, people will pay. So think beyond the square. Think beyond the norm, and look at, you can actually raise funds to help this, the hobby and passion you have in modifying cars. So there you go. That is my budget, and that gives you an idea of how I'm going about it. So there you go. There's 5 steps, 5 planning ideas to think about when you're building a daily driven track car. For me, these are the things that come front of mind for me, and particularly around having a budget in mind. I really haven't done that before, so I've started from the beginning. I've taken you through that. It's how I've done it, to the decisions I'm making around how much I'm willing to spend and how I go about it. Remember, planning ideas. 1, start with the end in mind. 2, be realistic. 3, remember, it's a daily driver. 4, have a budget in mind. And 5, what's your exit strategy? Hope these help. See you next time.